Good morning, and welcome to the Salem Lutheran Church Sunday Morning Bible Study. We'll be getting started in just a few moments. If you'd like to join in on the discussion, please join us by going to slcw.org and clicking the link to join the group. We'll be starting in just a few moments.
Well, good morning. Good morning, and welcome to our Sunday morning Bible study here at Salem Lutheran Church. Today, we'll be looking at Psalm 126. And this is the seventh in the series of 15 Psalms that are referred to as a Songs of Ascent. And basically, these were Psalms that were spoken or sung by Jewish pilgrims as they would make their way to Jerusalem to celebrate the three high holy days. So that's what this one is. This is another one of those Psalms of Ascent. Now, what makes this psalm kind of interesting is that this psalm, we believe, was composed after the exile. Exile, what does that mean? Well, I referred to this before, but let me just briefly go through it once again. In 597 BC, Israel was conquered by the Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar. And what they did is, after they conquered the city of Jerusalem, they took the best of those people to be held as captives in Babylon. What they took was basically the people who were leaders, the king and his royal court, his advisors, professional people, anybody who they thought might help organize a resistance against them back in Israel. So they thought this was a way of stifling any kind of rebellion or resurrection. Well, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so that happened in 597 BC. And they remained in Babylon for about 50, 60 years. They were able to return in 538. What happened between 597 and 538 was the Babylonians got conquered by an empire known as the Achaemenids, or we know it more familiarly as the Persian Empire. And Cyrus the Great, as he was referred to by history, allowed the Israelites who were in Babylon, who wanted to return back to Israel. Now, not all of them went. Some of them stayed because over the years, they had established roots, businesses, homes, families. And so they chose to stay in Babylon, but a good segment of them returned back to Jerusalem. And if you want to read stories about the exile, you can read the books of Ezekiel or Daniel in the Old Testament. If you want to read about how they got to return home, read the story of Esther. Esther is a story which talks about how this young Jewish girl rises to become Cyrus the Great's queen. And through her influence, she convinces Cyrus to allow the Jews to return. So they return in 538. You can also read about the return in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. Nehemiah was the royal governor who was sent to lead the Israelites back to Jerusalem, and Ezra was the high priest who returned with the people of Israel. So if you want to read about that period of history, those are some of the books to look at. Ezekiel and Daniel, which talk about their time there in Babylon. The book of Esther, which talks about how they were able to return. And then finally, Ezra and Nehemiah, which are the books that talk about their return and their rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem. Now, just as an interesting high note, as we said, not all the Jews were taken into captivity. Many of them stayed behind and continued their life as normal after the Babylonian victory. A lot of those Jews who stayed behind intermarried with the Canaanite tribes around there. And when the Jews first returned, these people welcomed them with open arms. But the Jews would have nothing to do with them because they felt they had intermarried and therefore polluted the pure blood of the Jewish people. These people eventually became known to the Jews as Samaritans. So that's where the Samaritans came from. They were basically intermarried Jews and Canaanites who had intermarried and therefore become sort of half-breeds as far as the Jews were concerned. Anyways, this psalm we think was written during that time of their return from Babylon back to Jerusalem. And so the psalm begins with a exclamation of grateful joy about their return. It starts out, and if you're following along now in 126, Psalm 126, it says, "When the Lord brought back the captivity of Zion, we were like those who dream." So here we hear the psalmist talking about how when they returned back from their captivity, the captivity of Zion, this is that Babylonian captivity. This is that period of time when the Israelites were held in captivity and now they were allowed to return. When the Lord brought back the captivity of Zion, when they were allowed to return, we were like those who dream. I'm going to just read from my commentary. It says, the first part says, the psalmist sang of a time when God set his people free from their captivity, and they were restored to Jerusalem. Most associate this with the return from exile under Ezra and Nehemiah. So that's what we're talking about. We were like those who were a dream. With power and beauty, we returned back to Jerusalem. We returned back to the promised land. And it was like a dream come true. That's how we felt about it. This was a dream come true for the Israelites. They were allowed to return. And it talks about how they were filled with such great joy when they were allowed to return. Then our mouth was filled with laughter, and our tongue was singing. Then they said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are glad. So you can see it's a celebrational psalm. It's a psalm that talks about how they are filled with joy and laughter and great joy because they're allowed to return back to their homeland, back to their promised land. So they are rejoicing. They celebrated God's amazing work with laughter, with singing. Their mouths were filled with it. For why? Because the Lord had done great things. They were amazed at what God had done for them, how God had been faithful to them in spite of their being not faithful to God. The Lord has done great things for us, the psalmist says. So the question I think that maybe we start with in this psalm is, how do we respond when God answers our prayers? How do we respond when God hears our prayers and answers them? My experience, sadly, has been so often that when prayers are answered, it's sort of ignored. We pray and pray and pray for God to provide us with some relief for something. Maybe it's an ailment, maybe it's a financial worry, maybe it's family concerns. And then those prayers are answered, and it's like we just go on like nothing happened. And the important thing that this psalm is telling us is that when God answers our prayers, we should remember to give thanks to God and praise his holy name, to rejoice with laughter and joy and praise God. You know, a while back, to give you a good example of this, a while back I told a story about a man in my church when I was in Belleville, Illinois, St. Paul Lutheran Church there in Belleville. And he had gone in the hospital, and I went to see him at the hospital, the local hospital in Belleville. And he told me that he had received some really bad news, that the doctors had told him that they had found a cancer and that they didn't feel comfortable performing the surgery that was required. So they were going to ship him off to the hospital in St. Louis and to Barnes Jewish Hospital. Barnes Jewish Hospital is a massive medical center. It's one of the 5 largest medical centers in the United States. I used to always laugh when he went there because when you went to the main desk, they would have lines on the floor and you would get in golf carts and drive and follow the lines. They would say, go to the blue pavilion. And you get in the golf cart and you would drive over to the elevators in the blue pavilion and then go up to the rooms. Huge, huge medical center. Anyways, they were sending him there to have the surgery done. And I told him that I would come the next day to Barnes and visit him and see how the surgery went. We had a prayer and we prayed for God to give him deliverance and healing powers and all the things a pastor would pray with his parishioners for in that situation. And the next day I got in my car late in the afternoon and I drove over to St. Louis to see the guy. And when I got there finally and I walked into his room, there he was sitting up next to the bed eating, which said to me right away, well, he didn't have the surgery. And so I was naturally concerned that they got him there and they decided they couldn't do the surgery or they'd have to delay it for some reason. And so I looked at him and I said, well, what happened, John? Didn't have surgery, huh? He says, no, they canceled it all. I'm going home tomorrow. I said, uh-oh, that sounded like bad news to me. He said, no, he says, when I got here, they decided to just run some routine MRIs to make sure exactly where the cancer was. And when they did the MRIs, they couldn't find anything. He said, well, the doctor said they must have messed up the MRI test at the other hospital or confused my results with somebody other patient. And then he looked at me and smiled and he said, but we know different, don't we, Pastor? He believed he had gotten a miracle from God and that God had provided him with healing powers. The important part about that story, is that, which I've never told, is how it changed the man. The man was kind of, before that, was kind of a infrequent attender at worship, not really involved in the church. He was a good guy. Come to church maybe once, twice a month with his family. That was about it. Family would come almost every Sunday, but not John. After that incident, John was a changed person. There was never a Sunday went by when John wasn't there. He started volunteering for things at the church. He became one of my Bible class teachers at the church. I saw him also involved in his community. He started volunteering for things like Habitat or Red Cross, and became a changed man. He got his miracle. His prayer was answered. And how did he respond to all of that? He responded to that with gratitude. And when I would ask him about that occasionally, I would say, what changed, John? He says, I just realized how much I owe God, and I'm going to try to pay him back a little bit. So when I left the church, John was still there, still involved in the church. I just recently got elected to the church council at the church, was a changed man, because not only that he got a miracle, but that he celebrated that miracle by trying to return God's love and God's laughter. So here we see, this is what the psalm is talking about. When God answers our prayers, how do we respond? Do we respond with, oh, that was nice? Or do we respond like a John who saw this as a gift from God, and that he was not going to waste the gift that God had given him? He was not going to waste the years that he still had from God, and that he was going to use the time that he had to give thanks to God and to praise God's holy name. So that's what the psalm is talking about. And like I said, the challenge it lays out to all of us is, how do we respond? How do we respond when God blesses us? How do we respond when God answers our prayers? Do we respond like John? I would encourage you all to do so. When God has demonstrated his tremendous love to you, respond by returning that love back to God. That's what the Israelites were saying. They returned with joy and laughter because of what wonderful things God had done for them. Then it goes on to talk about how not only has God delivered us from Babylon, but that God will continue to deliver us. It goes on, bring back our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. Bring back. The second half of this psalm does not deny the amazed joy of the first half, but it recognizes that there is still work to be done. The returning exiles realized there was much work to do, and the restoration had only yet begun. They had to continue to declare the glories of God. And it says, as the streams in the south. I'm just going to read this to you because I can't say it better than this says. As the streams in the south flowed when the rain fell in faraway mountains. Those streams could appear suddenly and rush with a mighty flow, sometimes known as flash floods. The psalmist prayed for a mighty, sudden work of God to further the work of restoration among his people. So after they had returned, they continued to pray to God that God would continue to fill them with his power and might, and that they would become like that rushing river, that sudden flash flood that God would fill them with so much power and so much strength that they would continue to give glory and honor to God's holy name, and that God's work could be done in them and through them. So you get this picture, like I said, of the sudden rains coming and this flash flood, and suddenly this torrent river rushing down the mountainside. And they wanted God to do that with them, make them this mighty river that will proclaim the glories of God, that the work is not done. Yes, they returned, but there is much to do to the glory of God. There is much to do in the name of God. And so they asked that God would make them like a mighty river. It's a prayer we all could use, to turn us into a mighty river. I don't know why I just thought of this song, this kid's song. Talks about the church, where it says, the refrain, I think, says something like, the church is not a building, the church is not a steeple, the church is not a resting place, the church is the people. We are the people of God. We are the ones who are called out by God to do mighty works. And the one thing I learned at the church as a pastor is that if everybody in the church is not working together, pulling together in the same direction to accomplish the same goals, then our work does not get done. But if we marshal all of the energy of people and put it to work, we can accomplish wonderful things. I would always get the question at the church from people about, well, I like to volunteer, but I don't know what to do. And I would always tell them, well, what do you like doing? What do you enjoy doing? And I said, try to see if you can take what you enjoy doing and use that to give glory to God. I had this one gal came to me when I was at Zion, and she said, she felt, she was an elderly lady and felt like there wasn't a whole lot she could do anymore at the church. But she wanted to do something. And I said, what do you enjoy doing? And she said, well, I don't know. I enjoy doing arts and crafts. I really enjoy knitting. And I said, well, go home and think about that and find out how you could take and put that to work. Came back to me about 2 weeks later in my office and said, I've got an idea, Pastor. I was reading on the internet about this ministry that another church has called the Prayer Shawl Ministry, where ladies in the church make prayer shawls, make shawls. And then they're blessed by the church and given out to people who are going through difficult circumstances, maybe health issues, maybe family issues, whatever. And I was wondering if we could do that. And I said, would you like to do that? And she said, yeah, I'd like to. I think I can do that. And so she organized ladies in the church. We had people donating yarn to these ladies. They would make prayer shawls. And then once a month, we'd pray over them at the church. We'd have them draped out over the pews, and we'd bless them. And then we would just give them out to people. And we got so many. Finally, we had so many, we actually had to build a chest to put them in the church. And we finally got to the point of saying to people, look, if you know somebody who's having a problem, who could use some comfort and strength, there's prayer shawls out there. Give them one of those and tell them what they are. And I would guess hundreds of prayer shawls went out from the church, all from a lady who asked herself, what can I do for God? And simply taking what she was able to do, the things she enjoyed doing, and using it to give glory and honor to God's holy name. When a church does that, when they become like that mighty river that the Psalm talks about, like that flash flood flowing down the mountainside, flooding the waters, flooding the land, we can become that mighty river. If everyone who attends a church, just ask yourself, what can I do for God? Take what you do, take what you love, take who you are, and use that in service to God. That is a tremendous, powerful force. Anyways, the Psalm goes on and it talks about how there's going to be other moments in life. Just because you were freed, the Psalm is reminding them, just because you have joy now, doesn't mean there won't be other sadnesses, doesn't mean there won't be more pain down the way, but know that pain will come, but also will come joy. Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. He who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seeds for sowing, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves with him. Yes, there will be more pain. Life is filled with pain, but always know that after the weeping, after the pain, comes joy. Why? Because God promises that he will continue to be with us. He will continue to bless us. He will continue to provide us with his love and mercy. It will never end. It will continue to come. Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. Yes, there may be times in your life when you'll have problems, but also know that God's blessings and God's care and God's continued grace is with you. And then he repeats the idea. He who continually goes forth weeping, bearing seed for sowing. The idea is repeated. Yes, 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 there will be times. And I'm sure we all have experienced that. All of us, know that we don't go, that life can sometimes be a continuation of sorrows. But the promise of God in this psalm is that even though those things happen, yeah, I solved my financial problems, but there may be next week you may go to the doctor and find out there's a health issue. There will be sorrows. Sorrow is part of life. God never promised us a rose garden. He promised us, though, that when we experience the thorns of life, when we get bloodied by life, we will not be beaten down, that God will raise us up and lift us up and provide us with joy, just like he did to these Israelites. Yeah, they came back and they were rejoicing, but there were other problems. They had wars still to fight. The people who were there in Israel when they returned didn't like them coming back. And there were battles to be fought. There were wars to be fought. In fact, one of the first things they had to do was build walls around Jerusalem to protect themselves. They would have to stand guard while the builders erected the wall. So they had soldiers standing there to guard the builders because they had to face that kind of problems. Just like for all of us. All of us, we will face difficulties and problems in life. They will come, but know that God is with you. Know that God will lift you up on eagle's wings. Know that you will be able to overcome whatever problems. And I guess that I say that at a time, for us as a nation, when we may feel that, evil is having its sway. But the promise of God is that when you feel that life is beating you down, when things around you are out of your control, know that God's promise is that he is still with you, and that the sorrow that you are experiencing now, that God will lift you up, for there will be joy. There will be the dawning of a new day. I firmly believe that with all my heart. So whether you're thinking about your own personal life or things that are going on around you, know that God's promise is that he will continue to be with you and bless you. Look at the Israelites. They had been carried off to serve as slaves in Babylon. Their lives were ripped apart. They were rooted out of their homelands. Their families were torn apart. And they were taken to a foreign land where they had to serve as slaves. And what happened to them? They returned. They returned with great joy and rebuilt their city. Why? Because God was with them. As they faced every other problem, as they were conquered by other nations, as they fought other battles, God continued to lift them up. And you look at the history of the Jews, and it is filled with that ebb and flow of sorrows and joy, rejoicing, being pulled down, being pulled apart as they're conquered by people and then find their freedom once again. And so now we find the promise to Israelites were always that they would remain as a nation forever. And we look now at the land of Israel, the Republic of Israel in the Middle East. It still stands, doesn't it? Because God's grace, God's love, God's promise, God's presence is with them, just like he will be with you forever and ever. Amen. And with that, I'm going to stop my Bible study. I'm a little early, but I've run out of things to say. So I'm going to turn to Tim and say, Tim, what's going on at Salem?
Well, Pastor, I am wanting to give you a heads up as to things that are going on right now. And that might include something that's happening immediately following our worship today. And that might be the chili cook-off that we're having. My chili's in the crock pot in the basement. There are, I think, 2 other chilies that are down there already plugged in, waiting to be brought. I don't know, Pastor, are you bringing a chili today?
Yep.
Excellent,
am.
excellent. Barb is
I
bringing
am.
us chili. Excellent. I know that we have some roadkill chili coming, and maybe some venison chili coming. So we're hoping that you all join us for that chili cook-off, as well as a 90th birthday party with Shirley Wise. She's turning 90 sometime this month, but we're celebrating today. So if you didn't know about this, you should come, because at 11 o'clock we're celebrating 90 years of Shirley. So we're very happy about that. And then, so we'll have all kinds of different things for that event. Food like crazy, lots of chili to give money toward, and that money raised will be going to defray the costs of the roof replacement, as well as the food pantry. I believe we're splitting the two. I can't remember exactly how we decided how we were going to do that, but it is a fundraiser. So join us and help us raise some money for the events that we're getting coming up. Our normal Monday night is supposed to be a cold one, but we're going to be here. We're serving food at 6 o'clock. Probably going to be the leftovers from today. So you'll get a chance to have some chili and some of the other things that they brought to celebrate Shirley. So Monday starts at 6 o'clock. It's the NFL Monday night. Stands for Nourishment, Fellowship, and Learning. The Nourishment and Fellowship start at 6 and go till 7. 7 o'clock is when we watch another episode of The Chosen, and we break when we're done discussing it. So join us for that. Bring an appetite, bring a friend, and bring a willingness to hear the word in the form of the Chosen series. I don't know exactly how many times we've gone through it, but we're in season 2 right now, about midway. And as we plan it, we try to make it land so that we end up, when we're done with episodes, to flow into the next season, which I guess there's at least one more season coming. So we have 5 seasons that we can watch. We hope that you join us. And no matter when you come in, you don't have to know the whole backstory. You can join us and start where you're at. We'll help you catch up if you haven't seen any of them, and introduce you to the characters and their backstories, so that you can understand what you're watching. So join us for that. It's always a great event. We had a ladies event on Wednesday this past week, and I guess it went well. The ladies all got together and chatted and ran into some members that were at Bueller's as well. So we love hearing about that. And those kind of events will continue to happen. We also have next Sunday, as usual, Bible study at 9 a.m. with Pastor Nathan, and hopefully that you'll join us for that once again. No matter which way you look at the things that happen here, if you're online and you're watching from afar, you can do so by watching live on Facebook or by watching a replay on YouTube. I'm going to be starting the process and trying to download and keep up with the Bible studies as well. We're going to put those up in a folder for all the previous Bible studies that we have saved for review on our YouTube channel. So we have them live on Facebook. We have the video available on YouTube, because Facebook only keeps them for a month. So we're trying to make certain that we have access and can continue that access into the future with YouTube. So bear with us on that as we try to get those videos uploaded. And you can go and check out the whole series of Bible studies that Pastor Nathan has produced. So that is all I have. I'm going to hand it back off to Pastor.
All right. Well, it sounds like a lot. I'm looking forward to the chili cook-off. I've got to figure out a way to safely transport my slow cooker filled with chili. So I hope people are listening will come out and enjoy the chili cook-off with us.
Yep.
Until next
you have
week.
2 other pots of chili coming with you too.
Pardon?
You have Bill's chili and Barb's chili that is coming.
No, Bill's keeping his chili to himself. I made my chili. He said to bring my chili.
Well, good for Bill.
How can he do such a thing? Oh my goodness! I don't know.
Well, I'll more than make up with it with my delicious chili. So
okay.
Until next week, when we meet again to discuss Psalm 127, God's blessings be with you all. May his love shower itself down upon you. But as always, may he keep you warm and may he keep you smiling until we meet again. God bless you all. Have a great week.
You too.
Thank
Thank you
you,
very much,
Pastor.
Pastor.